So this is my lead virtual assistant, Christine, and today I'm going to be interviewing her on how she helps run my entire multi-million-dollar Airbnb operation, all the way from hiring and firing, training new virtual assistants, to how she works with the boots on the ground staff, with property managers, with different vendors like cleaners, maintenance men, handymen, and we're going to get a deep dive into basically how the operations looks behind the scenes. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Christine?
Hi, my name is Christine. I've been working for Derek for 4 years. What I do on a daily basis is I manage his properties, check on guest inquiries, and if there are issues, we make sure to take care of them. For the hiring or like getting people, we make sure that we really check on or like filter or like do background checks for everybody, so that we will make sure that the people that get hired is the perfect person for the spot. And then we do daily tasks as well, like admin tasks, wherein we do accounting sheets, we check listings, calendars, check the properties, and so on. I also have been a case manager for Airbnb before for like 2 years. And what we normally do is talk to guests and hosts and make sure that we have fair decisions for every issues or anything that we have to encounter during the call. So that's basically like what we normally do on a daily basis.
Awesome. So we're going to be deep diving into it, so stay tuned. So a lot of hosts are listening in and they may be wondering how they can win more claims. So I kind of want to give them an inside look on the claims process and how you as an agent before inside of Airbnb decide on whether you give the guest a refund or half refund. So if, for example, let's say a common issue, guest calls into Airbnb and says the listing isn't clean, and let's say they call it closer to checkout and they provide a lot of evidences, videos, photos. Now, what do you as an agent do in that process? What do you look for? And can you walk us through, like, let's say an example of you making a final decision?
Okay. So normally, for example, it's a cleanliness issue that they called in. That's the reason why they called. The first thing that I ask is photos. Because of course, it's not just a word of mouth that you believe in. There should be evidence always. So I ask photos from the guests. That's the first thing. And then I ask detailed information of what really happened during the stay. And then once that's provided, I reach out to the host. And if the host said that the property is clean, then I ask photos from him with the timestamp, just so that I can compare both of the photos. If the host was able to like really provide me an evidence that really shows that the property is clean beforehand, then that's the time that I decide that it's really the host side. Because of course, if the property is clean before the guests arrive, then there's no reason for this guest to claim that the property is not clean in the first place. So I normally check on the evidences, compare them. If it's really the property that the guest is claiming, if it's really on the right time that they checked in. So just to make sure that he's telling the truth.
Right, so you would say if a host has time-stamped photos
Yes.
of the property being clean before the guest checks in, like
Yes.
that is pretty much a trump card to win
Yes.
claims?
Yes. And also, much better if you have invoices from the cleaners as well. Because that's one thing that would show that they have cleaned the property beforehand. Because that's already a document showing that there's a date, time that they started and ended, so it's already another proof.
Would you say videos or photos or both?
Much better if you have both.
Both.
Yes.
And that's a process that we do in our own company.
Yes.
Right, so we use Slack,
Yes.
and whenever our cleaners finish, they send in a lot of very detailed photos, or we
Yes.
even send in photos of bed, underneath the bed,
Yes,
the toilet,
exactly.
to make sure like
Every
there's
part
nothing
of the
missed.
property, yes.
And they send a video as well. So
Yes.
can you tell me about a time that we've had that issue and we've had to fight someone claiming it was clean or unclean?
Yeah.
And what you did to win that process? Because I know we win a ton of claims.
Yes, we did. There's this one time that the guest entered the property and she was claiming that there are cigarette butts and that the property was not clean. So I was asking from that guest like a photo as a proof that there is really one. And then the guest sent us a photo wherein there's just one cigarette on top of the table. So for me, that's not valid evidence to show that the property is really not clean in the first place. So what happened was the guest called Airbnb and she filed a claim stating that the property is not clean and then showing the evidence to them. Then when Airbnb called me, I was asking Airbnb what photos or what evidence did the guest showed you, and they sent me this photo, same photo that the guest sent us. And then I was already asking the case manager, if you're in my position, you would really say that that's already an evidence for you? Because it's really not. If it's just one cigarette, I couldn't even put that on top of the table.
Yeah, and you notice a lot of guests like
Yes.
plant evidence, right?
Because they really, if they really don't want a property, they would tend to make something up So it's really keen that you have to really ask and make sure you have evidence to back your ass up.
And so we ended up winning that claim, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And so what did you send to them to win that claim?
I actually sent them a photo and a video of the property being cleaned beforehand, and the same table, that specific table where the guest found the cigarette butt.
Right, right. So it's very important as a host to make sure you don't just take a very general photo. You make sure you take like photos of specific areas, multiple angles to make sure that you can win.
Exactly.
So I mean, there's been times as well where a case manager sided with the guest without even asking us our side.
Yes.
Right. So in that scenario, can you talk us through what you did to win it back?
It happens all the time, actually. There are certain case managers that tend to make like an easy decision for them. Like they just make the decision and close the case. But the thing is, if you know that you're on the right side of the story, then you have to fight for it. So I would tend to call Airbnb again and ask for another case manager up until the time that I can talk to somebody who can really help and understand the situation that we're in. So that's what I normally do.
So some case managers, would you say, are biased towards host, biased towards guests?
Yes.
What percentage would you say is that around? Is it 50-50 or is it more towards the side of the host?
I can say that it's more of like 60-40. Them being 60 for the guest and then 40 for the host.
And for a host that maybe they meet a case manager that sides with the guest, I think a lot of hosts don't know this, but they can actually call Airbnb again and get a new case manager, right?
Yes.
Has there been an instance where we had to do that multiple times?
Yes. Like I called 3 to 4 times before I can get somebody to help. So you just have to have patience and really look for somebody who can really understand the situation, not just taking the side of the guest.
And what would you say to hosts that may be afraid of like retaliatory reviews? That's something that we were worried about at first. You've been working with me for a while, and we're pretty worried about filing claims for damages because of bad reviews.
Yes.
But now as a company, we do it pretty much on the regular, right? Because we need to make sure that our margins are good, and so we're not afraid to file those claims. So can you talk a little bit about retaliatory reviews, how we deal with like potential negative guest feedback from claims?
Because right there you would know that this will bounce back to us, right? For example, we file a claim during either the stay or at the end. So it would really come back to us. So what I normally do is check on the thread and make sure that we have evidence. Like I collect every details that I need to know just in case it happens that they put a bad review on us so that I can fight for the review to be removed. So it's always like that. You would really have to check on a loophole between you and the guest during that stay.
Right, right.
You shouldn't like really be stuck on because you're afraid to file the claim for the guest or from the guest because of the review. It's not like that. You just really need to know or assess the conversation you had with the guest and the issue. Where is it really coming from? And you just have to have evidence always.
Right, right. If you can prove that you're in the right, then you can get the review removed because it was retaliatory.
Yes.
And then I think some hosts may want to wait until the review period is almost over to file the claim. But would you say that's actually not a good idea? Because if a new guest comes in, then it's harder for you to win the claims case?
I don't think so. Normally, it's like 50-50. You can file within, you can file after, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you know that you're on the right side and you're on the page where you can fight for it, then you can go for it.
Right, right. But as a company, we typically file right away.
Yes.
Because we want to make sure we don't have any backlog.
Yes.
And if we have to, utilize cash to fix something, like we want to make sure we get reimbursed right away.
Yes, correct.
What was the craziest claim that we had to make? I think it was maybe G218 with the robbery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Can you
remember.
tell them a little bit about how you handled that and how you helped us get reimbursed?
The guest actually stayed there for a long time. It's actually a long-term reservation. He already checked out of the property but went back in after a few days. So he said that it was for a business, so I thought everything is fine because it's for a business trip, so we didn't know that it actually happened. So when that guest checked out, we had the property inspected, and that's the only time that we found out that we got robbed. So some of our stuff was taken out of the property.
Yeah, the fridge,
The television,
the window
the
was
sheets.
smashed.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's really a tough one because we didn't really have any evidence that that guest specifically took everything. Could be him or it could be other people. But it's just that he's the last person who stayed at the property.
Right.
So I gathered all the photos needed on that claim and then the reservation details of that guest. And I had a police report filed as well, just so that if in case Airbnb was asking for it, I already have the document ready for them. And then that's actually one good proof that we got robbed, and that's why Airbnb took place and helped us out with getting that claim win.
Do you remember the amount that we were able to hear on that?
I really can't remember.
It was like
4,000, I
Around
think.
4,000?
4,000.
Yeah. If there's any sort of like robbery or like you're missing any items, it really is helpful to file a police report. That way you can show it as evidence to Airbnb.
Yes, exactly.
So team that handles...
Oh, it's from the US.
It's from the US. Trust and safety. At that point, it gets escalated.
Yeah, to trust and safety team.
Would you say the US trust and safety team is harder to deal with than the Philippines team while you're working with me?
Yes,
Yeah.
they're very keen. They don't easily make the decision. It would really take time for them to do so. Even if evidence are presented and you are on the right spot and you have your points, it's still gonna be like few days before you can get a result. And the problem there is that you can't really reach them directly. It's just through email. So you really have to watch out for their emails. And they're the ones who's gonna call you. They would tell you when specifically that they would be calling you, and you just have to really wait for them. Just really have your phones ready for them to call.
And make multiple follow-ups.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about when you first started with me. We were at like 12 properties. And you were pretty much the first virtual assistant that I ever hired.
Yes.
Yeah. So what was that experience like joining my team? And did you expect it to be a big company, or what were your expectations? And how did it go for you from your perspective at the beginning?
When I got hired, at first, I really didn't expect this to be big because we started just like 12 properties. So my perception is just do my job because I really need that job at that time. There's really no expectations, but I know the workload already because it's been my job with Airbnb too. So, but eventually when we started getting properties, that's the time that I realized that it's getting big and the responsibility is getting big as well. So I didn't really expect it to be on this position at this moment when I started.
Yeah, and now you pretty much lead our entire team of virtual assistants.
Yes.
So how many people are on our team?
Now we have 4 VAs plus me, so 5.
For the
Austin team,
Austin
yeah.
team.
Yeah.
What would you say were some differences transitioning from working for Airbnb versus coming into work for a host? A lot of hosts that may be watching this, they're looking to hire anyone similar to yourself. Would you say it was quite easy for you to adjust?
It's quite easy to adjust because you already know the processes. So if you're from Airbnb and then you're gonna work for a host, it's gonna be easier because you already know what to do. It's just that you need like additional skills and information, but the basics are already there. So it's not really just like a big jump of adjustment.
Right.
Yes.
But for you specifically, because you started earlier with us when we didn't really have any systems and processes, and you really helped us create those. I think we first started with money.com and you were helping us create all the boards.
Yes.
So what would you say to a new host that may be starting and looking to hire a virtual assistant? How important are the systems and processes, and what exactly do you think they should be doing?
I think the most important part is you have the proper tools to be used, because it's really hard if you're gonna start with an empty hand. Like when I started, we just start to build those, so we didn't have anything at that back then. It's just Airbnb or the platform, and then our cleaners and maintenance. That's it. But if you have the proper tools, like let's say you have Monday.com to organize things, like the tasks that is given, maintenance board wherein all the maintenance are there. It's much more organized than before. So it's much easier to handle the properties if you have those kind of tools.
Exactly, and because you and the other virtual assistants, like you've never seen any of the properties in person, right?
Yes.
So what would you say is something that our company has done that has allowed you to be able to do your job better, considering the fact that you've never seen any of the properties in person? You may not know where anything is, where everything is placed.
The best way to deal with that is communication. I normally tend to ask, because I'm not physically there, so the best person you can ask is the cleaners, because they are always there. So whenever there is a question regarding, like, let's say a plate or a pan, where is it placed, and blah blah, all those stuff, you just have to ask them and take note. And then sometimes I base it on the photos that cleaners sent to us. So it's not just the photos of the listing, but the cleaners sent photos, and that's gonna help you out, because that's already a record where the stuff are placed inside the property.
Yeah, so it's very important for the virtual assistant to have a good connection and teamwork with the cleaning team.
Yes.
And the reason why we've been working together so well for so long is because of the strong connection that you have with them. I mean, we started with them pretty much around the same time that you came in, so it's been about 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
Can you talk about that relationship?
I treat them as not just colleague, but friends too. So I normally tend to talk to them, like ask them how are they, and then I open up to them whenever I need help. And same goes with them. Hey, I need your help with this, and I make sure to attend to those. So it's more of building the friendship between them and us.
For sure. What would you say is something that you do for the cleaners that is like super helpful for them?
I always make sure that if they needed help, I'm always there. So whenever they message me, hey Christine, I need you to do this or do that, I make sure to do it immediately.
Right.
So not to pen them and wait for something to happen. So
what
I
are
immediately
some
do.
examples of things that you've asked? Maybe like, I know we have some issues where guests don't check out on time.
Exactly.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So there are certain times where guests really don't check out immediately. So what I normally do, if that is reported by the cleaners, I immediately call the guests. I don't tend to send texts or like messages on the thread because sometimes they don't really answer immediately. So I tend to call and ask why are they still there. The cleaners reported that you're still there and the checkout time is this. I'm sorry, but you have to really check out now because they needed time to prepare the property for the next guest. So that's one thing I normally do.
And then for those guests that don't answer or refuse to leave, what are the next steps that we typically take?
Next step that I do is call Airbnb and report. Report that the guest didn't check out on time and then file a claim. File a claim wherein I would charge them for late checkout, or if they really exceeded the time, I would have to charge them a specific amount just for them to leave the property.
An extra day.
Yes, extra night. Yes, exactly.
So we touched on late checkout. So can you talk a little bit about the fees that we have in all of our listings and how easy it is to collect each fee, what they are? We start with like the late checkout fee.
Okay. Before I think that was $20, but now it's $25 per hour. So the checkout time is 11 and then check-in is at 4. So checkout time is 10 and then 4. So if they exceeded those, like for example, the checkout is 10 and then they check out at, let's say, until 2 p.m. So I charge them per hour. But if they exceeded 2 p.m. onwards, I charge them a day. Same goes with early check-in. So if they checked in like, let's say 2, 3, or let's say 1, it's just the hourly rate. But if it's earlier than that, it's 1 day already in addition. Or I suggest them to book the day before. So that's what I normally do.
Yeah, and so collecting those early check-ins and late checkouts typically brings us an extra, I would say, $4,000 to $5,000 in revenue per month. So I remember when we first started, I was a little apprehensive on how we can collect those fees.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about the process of how you figure out that they want that? How do you pretty much collect those fees through the resolution center, or if people refuse to pay it, or they aren't aware of it? Tell us a little bit about the collection process on that.
Before, what we have is just sending them a message if they want to do early check-in or late checkout. But now we have questionnaires that they normally answer. So right there and there, we would already know if they needed a late checkout or early check-in. So right there and there, I communicate with them and file already the request for early check-in or late checkout. And if in case the guest wouldn't pay, Airbnb is going to be involved already on that situation. So we would show the thread to Airbnb that the guest is asking for late checkout or early check-in as a proof, and then we would tend to file the request already, and then Airbnb will handle those for us.
And I would say pretty much 90% of the time, Airbnb will pay that out.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how important is having the Ring camera and proof that the guest, left late or came in early? Yeah,
that's another thing. Having Ring camera is very helpful because that's already another evidence that we can show Airbnb that they really checked in early, because there is a timestamp and track as to what time they arrived or what time they left. So we can download it and share it with Airbnb as well, which is a good evidence.
And our Ring cameras are only on the outside.
Yes, exactly. We don't have any cameras inside, but just outside.
So with Ring cameras, we can also see if guests are bringing unauthorized pets.
Exactly.
You want to talk a little bit about our pet fee structure, collections process on that?
Our pet fees depend on the number of days the guest is staying. So there are times that guests really don't declare their pets, but of course, because of the Ring camera, we would know already if they have pets with them or not. So if they do, we communicate with them and ask them for the fee. Same thing goes if they don't pay the fee that we're collecting from them, we would ask Airbnb for help and then send them proof. It's the same process, but we just really make sure that we can prove Airbnb that they have that pet with them.
Right.
Yes.
And besides the Ring camera, we also send in any evidence of fur from the cleaners, right?
Yeah, coming from the cleaners, because sometimes cleaners send photos and they would say that there is really a pet here. So that photo is already another evidence.
And then if someone's staying multiple months, oftentimes if they bring a pet, that can take us from maybe making $1,500 net on the monthly stay to $1,800. Charge $300 on a one-bedroom for the pet fee.
Exactly.
And what sort of, because some hosts may be wary about hosting pets because of the dirtiness and the cleanup. How often would you say that our furniture gets damaged or things have to get replaced because of the fact that we host pets?
It's rarely happening, actually. Maybe because we have a detailed house rule wherein and they really have to take care of the pet during the stay. It's just that we can't avoid first, like it's reported if they have pets. So it's common. So it doesn't really happen that much, but it could be. So what we normally ask them is how big the dog is, depending on what property they book, especially for studio types. Because of course, having big dogs in a studio type can cause problems. So we normally ask them how big the pet is, like just filtering it out if it's possible for them to bring the pet with them or not. Yeah, I can say that it's really rarely happening.
Do we have any crazy stories about hosting pets? I think there was this one lady that had brought like parrots, right?
Yes.
8 or 9 parrots.
Yes.
Did we end up actually hosting her or no?
I don't think so.
No, we didn't.
No.
Yeah.
But we had this issue or instance wherein the dog was lost inside the complex, and it was found by the neighbor. And the neighbor reported it to the complex leasing office, and the leasing office called me and telling me that the dog is with the neighbors. So I just communicated it with the owner.
So you also have to, as a virtual assistant, maintain a good relationship with the leasing office.
Yes.
And the property management.
Yes.
So how would you say that has been going for you? Because I know like a lot of times issues happen, right?
Yes.
You can't prevent them.
Exactly.
But how do you handle that, when issues happen? How do you handle it? And how do you make sure that the relationship is still good?
In terms of communicating with the leasing office, I just normally introduce myself and be polite and precise with the information I gave them. It's not that they don't know you, it's just that how you communicate with them and how you provide them the information. I normally tend to say please most of the time, just so that they can attend to our needs. And I think that made me build a connection with them. So I don't tend to really argue with them that much. I just made sure that I relay the point of view that I have with them.
I mean, a big point of contention is, especially with apartments that are slow with maintenance,
yes,
that could start to sour the relationship.
Yes.
So how do you really handle that where, let's say we file a maintenance request on an AC that's broken and they just take forever to fix it.
Okay.
What sort of things do we have to do creatively to get around that issue?
So, for example, the maintenance of the complex couldn't attend immediately and you weren't getting any feedbacks or updates as to when they're gonna fix it. You just have to follow it up. But there are times that there are emergencies like AC issues. You have to really make a decision to look for a vendor. For vendors, you would really have to look for somebody who would attend or specialize with that kind of appliance. So I normally look for someone over Google, and I check on their ratings, their prices, and their feedbacks or reviews coming from the other people who use their service.
Right.
So that's one thing that I normally do to resolve the issue, because it's urgent and we really have to take care of the guest.
Yeah. And out of the buildings that we have, how many of them are good on maintenance? How many of them are not responsive?
I think out of all of our properties, there's just 2.
Just 2?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Just 2. Just 2 complexes that are really slow. Mm-hmm. But most of them, they really attend to the issue, especially if we call in to follow up again.
Right. And if an issue isn't getting resolved, like the AC
Yeah.
broke and it's not getting replaced, we just have to eat the cost as a host and just hire a vendor and do it yourself. Because at the end of the day, you're bleeding money. And then when you do get that resolved, you should have the right to reduce it from your rent.
Yeah.
So that's something that could also be a point of contention, but that's something you have to fight for because that is your margins. But right now, we're dealing with a couple of those issues actually.
Yes.
And so we decided to go ahead and get that fixed, get the AC replaced. That was $1,200?
$1,200
for each of them. And then now we're basically, and that's where I come in and I have to talk with the property management as the owner of the company and basically reduce that from my rent, because at the end of the day, it falls on the hands of
Yes.
the apartment staff.
Yes.
So as we were talking about the hiring process, I brought on Chris, who was a recent hire. We hired him about 6 months ago onto our team. And so why don't you introduce yourself, Chris?
My name is Chris. So previously I worked with Airbnb, and now I'm working as a property manager with Derek for almost 6 months now.
And you're handling mostly claims.
Mostly the claims, yes.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. He basically runs our entire claims department where we collect claims. And typically it's about between 20 to 30K in claims that we win.
Yes.
Yeah, per month. So this will be very, very good content on how process that he utilizes to win that. But we were back to the hiring process. So Christine, do you want to talk a little bit about how you hire and train, and maybe later we'll talk about firing people? So why don't you tell us a story about how you hired Chris?
Okay, so in the process of hiring people, like what we did with Chris, we normally, if there are people who has referrals, like friends or colleagues of mine, applying, I normally ask them if they know somebody who can actually work for us. And then we like filter, like check if they're fit for the job, like ask a few questions. Because what we're targeting is that a person who can stay longer with the company. And then the reason why I ask some questions is to basically know the skills of that person, how he works, or how his, not really skills, but I can filter which department I can place him in. So it's not just hiring people, but you would know that the people you're hiring is the right one for the position.
What are some questions?
Normally, I ask if they're pretty much flexible with the schedule. That's one thing. Another thing is that if they are open to any type of schedule, meaning if they can go graveyard, they can go morning, because we tend to change the schedule just so to be fair with everybody. Another question that I ask is work ethics. So if they can work under pressure, how they handle stress, and then I dig deep with the experience that they have with Airbnb. So how they handle issues and stuff like that. That's one thing I ask them. So
and
those
also
are
their communication skills.
yes, and that's how you can base them when they engage the communication with the questions I ask them.
Okay. And then how was your experience through our hiring process?
The hiring process was actually very stiff or difficult. So a lot of questions were asked. What are the things that you were doing on your current job? And then what are the things that you do best? And then what are the things that you can actually put into the company, that you can actually bring on the table that will actually benefit the company? So those are the things that you need to make sure that you highlight if you will be applying for a VA job.
So what advice would you tell them? What sort of things should they do? What sort of evidence should they submit so they can win more claims and be better at winning them?
My tips are make all of your communication through the Airbnb platform. That's number one. Make everything documented. So there are times that guests might actually make a phone call and have a different conversation. So do a recap of your communication with that guest, either through text or preferably through Airbnb platform or Airbnb messaging thread. And make sure as well that you do have all of the documents like pictures, especially videos. Please have all of those documented or saved. And then if you think that the guest will actually create like a lot of issues, I highly suggest you should also contact Airbnb as well. So at least report them of the possible issue that this guest might actually call Airbnb. So at least you'll have a backup from Airbnb on what's currently going on.
So switching gears into you doing claims for us, the tips that you gave were really, really good, but can you tell us a little bit about what you do specifically for our company to help us be able to win a bunch of claims, right? Actually, we have a lot of cases where guests may cancel reservations for one reason or the other, but you're able to save a lot of those reservations and make sure we still get the payout. So what are some things that you do in order to ensure that?
Things that I do is for claims for damages, these are the information that are not disclosed to by Airbnb to their hosts or through their resolution center. Is if you'll be filing for a damage claim, you need to make sure that you file it on the date of checkout of the guest, and you need to file it as well before the next guest checks in and before 14 days. But the critical part is before the next guest checks in, because you need to make sure that those claims are actually properly filed to Airbnb through resolution center. And all of the documents like pictures and videos should also be saved. And that will be the time when you make a follow-up with Airbnb with those claims, they can easily see all of the documents that you submitted, provide all of the details, then they'll be able to reevaluate it and provide you the claims or the payout for those claims. Others are, you need to make sure that you know the process as well. So don't be shy in asking Airbnb, because that's part of their job, to educate the hosts in terms of their process and policies, because most of the time Airbnb will always go to the easiest part and where they can actually get easier resolution. So most of the time that will be going to the guests. So you really need to know more about their policies. Don't be shy in asking on how do they evaluate amenities, how do they categorize amenities as critical or low severity, and how much will be the percentage of payout that will be adjusted if those type of amenities are actually the issues during the reservation. If you know those process or stuff, then you know on how Airbnb do their works with guests' issues. Another is know more about their policies, like ground rules for guests and also hosting standard. You need to make sure that you know those articles, because this is where you will also base on how you will communicate with Airbnb on how they handle claims or guests' issues. I think that will be all.
100%. And that's a big reason why we hired Chris. When you get to a certain volume in your business, you need to have different departments for your virtual assistants. So Christine is pretty much the head of the operations, guest communications. Chris is the head of the claims. Like pretty much his entire job is to make sure that we win claims. I would say probably at about maybe like 30 properties-ish, you should probably get someone that works claims because then you'll have enough volume. Otherwise, when you're at around 30 to 50 properties, you can get away with having 3 VAs, kind of everyone, doing their thing. We also have entire virtual assistant dedicated to just accounting tasks as well, maintaining our accounting, our internal sheets, on ADR, occupancy, and all of that. But back to claims. So can you give us like a quick overview process from a host perspective? Like, let's say something happens, what are the steps that you follow to make sure claims is successfully won? And let's say, like, talk us through a more difficult case, like maybe something where you didn't immediately win, you had to follow up, then you had to reply to an email. Talk us through like one of the more difficult cases that you may have to win as a host.
There is a claim that I actually had difficult winning is that when the initial agent who made the decision and canceled a long-term reservation, I think that will be like a month or two. So I may need to make a follow-up like 3 to 5 times and may need to speak to a different representative. So what I normally do is that if I feel that the representative already mishandled that case, I no longer want to speak to that representative. I'd rather have that case to be closed, then I'll contact a different support ambassador. Then that will be the time that I will dispute the claims and lay out all of the information why they didn't do it in handling the claims. So like, for example, the issue is actually like a leak in the kitchen. Then the documentation that was submitted is just a picture with water. So I asked the representative why you didn't contacted us, because we could have done so many things in resolving that kind of issue. And then how did you identify that picture or documentation is actually from our listing and you already canceled the reservation? So those are the things that I normally ask from Airbnb or to the Airbnb representative. If they don't, or if they cannot provide those kind of documentations or prove that those claims are actually valid coming from the guests, and that's the time that I would really like to ask a payout for that canceled reservation.
And we end up winning that case.
Yes.
Yep. So you would recommend hosts, if they win or if they lose the first time, to call back and get a new case manager.
Yes.
Something that not a lot of hosts may know to do. If they just lose a case right away or the first time, they just think it's lost money. You can actually call in and keep getting case managers that may be more amenable to hosts, right? Because would you say some case managers are more biased towards guests and some are more biased towards hosts? Like they will work with you to side with you in claims?
Based on my experience, every time that I contact Airbnb, most of the time they side their decision to the guests. Yeah, because of the air cover. So because what they're understanding in terms of the air cover is that if there's any issues in the reservation, automatically the guests can actually get out of the reservation and cancel it, then rebook to a different reservation or to a different listing. So there's a reason why you need to really knowledgeable in terms of the Airbnb policy and process and be strong or strict in terms of following their own policy and asking them why you didn't follow your own policy in this type of situation or why you didn't contacted us in providing a resolution to this guest.
So back to the hiring and training. So when you first joined us, Chris, you passed the interview process. You handled that for me, Christine, and I approved him to join our team. We discussed the salary amounts, the times that he would work. At first, it was $400 a month. He worked 6 days a week with 1 day off. So after bringing on a new team member, how do you train them? What are the things that you do? How do you teach them? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
For the training process, we would start with the basics, just like a refresher of the Airbnb policies, because that's the main thing that they need to be or to have just to be equipped with when they start being a VA. And then the next step is to train them with the tools. Because tools is just the next part. It's not the main ones. It's more of the knowledge that they have to really know. And then lastly, the processes, because it's different. It's a different process when you are working for a host and working with Airbnb. So yeah, those are the 3 main points or factors that I need to train them with. And when I know that they're ready, that's the time that I would tend to have them hands-on with starting with the messages and phone calls. And then eventually when they stay and do the same stuff, then I would try to transition them with other tasks as well. So that's the normal process of how I train them.
Okay. And the typical timeline for that, you would say 1 to 2 weeks for training?
Yeah, 1 week for training. training.
1 week for training,
Yes.
and then 1 to 2 weeks for shadowing.
1 week for
Yeah.
shadowing.
Can you tell us a little bit about shadowing and how that?
For the shadowing, it's more likely on how we handle things. It's not typically like not letting them answer, but letting them be equipped. So sometimes when they're shadowing, I'll give them a time to answer the messages for themselves, and then I'll check if they're following the process that we have. Because typically with on a call center business, shadowing is more like just watching. For me, watching is not gonna help.
Not enough.
It's
Yeah.
for them to learn while they're doing it on their own. Because it's much better that way.
Yeah. And something that I've experienced at first and when I hired you is, and a lot of hosts have this problem too, is being able to let go and trust other people to handle the communications or deal with claims. And I know when you were working with me and you started becoming more of a manager role and training other people, you had to learn to kind of let go as well and not do everything yourself, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that change and the change in your mindset?
It's actually really hard. It's a hard decision to let go of people because you've already worked with them. You know how to handle them. It's just that if you really are at that time that you really have to let go, you would just really have to be firm and relay the information to them. The reason why you're letting them go.
Oh, wait, what I mean is like letting them handle things, right? Because oftentimes, I think at the beginning when you were training people, you would come in and just answer the question.
Yes.
If a guest had a question or
Yeah.
deal with a sort of issue because you
Yeah.
know how to do it.
Yes.
But how has your mindset shifted to where you let others, maybe make mistakes or do things themselves, and you just kind of sit back and manage?
I have the tools actually. Because when I started with you, I created this file or info sheet wherein the information is there. And we also have Monday board to help us. So whenever we have new information that we needed, or let's say an information that they would be needing in the future, we make sure that we have them on file. So just in case that they encounter it, they would just have to look the file for themselves. It's more like not spoon feeding them and answering them or giving them the answer. It's for them to find out how
Right.
they would handle
How to use the
those.
resources
Yes,
that we
exactly.
have. What has your experience been utilizing our resources, Chris? Like, what's something that you think we do very well in order for someone like you as a new hire to be able to get up to speed quick?
Basically, it's getting the grasp on the things that you need to do with the company. So you need to really learn fast in understanding the process. Good thing with the company is that all of the information that you need is already there. For example, Monday board. So all of the logins, all of the information about the properties, codes, everything is already there. So all you need to do is just check it and learn on how to find it for yourself so that you don't need to ask your colleagues or Christine from time to time in getting those information. The more that you get immersed and also to get experience in handling those cases from the guests and answering their questions on a daily basis, then you will also get immersed on how to find those answers through our internal tools.
Yeah, so for those of you that may not know, Monday.com is a tool, like a project management tool. It's kind of like Excel on steroids. And we have many boards that we utilize to basically keep track of information or keep track of different tasks. For example, our board that we use the most, I would say, is the Quick View board.
Yeah, quick view.
So that basically has a bunch of data on each property. So each property is a row, and in the columns are different data points like the address, backup code, what is like the property manager's number, etc. I think we have maybe 30 or 40 columns of information that we keep. And would you guys say that's a big help?
Yes, it's a big help.
Okay. And how often on a daily or weekly basis do we have to update those boards?
I think 2 to 3 times in a week. If there is any new information that you may need to add, like for example, if you keep on calling leasing offices, there are new things that you may need to update, like the pool access, what are their new codes that we may need to use to inform our guests. Also, if there is any announcement that we may need to know, that all VAs should also need to know, that we can actually update that on our internal systems. So those are the things that we normally do in updating the Monday board.
Because when you're working with properties, things could be constantly changing. If a new management comes in, then you have to update the numbers, or if they decide to close the pool down for maintenance or for cleaning, you have to make a note about that, in the property. And so it's very important to have a central source of truth in your business where everyone can look at one resource to know hey, this is what is actually true about the property versus having things all over the place. I think before when we first started, we had documents for each property, and that was just a mess, right? If we were able to run 200 properties and have a document for each one, it's just too hard. So that's why we utilize the Monday board. That way everything is all in one place, and if you need to look for something, it's very quick.
Yes.
Another board that we use that's been very, very important is the maintenance or issues board, right?
Yes.
Does one of you want to talk about that and how we use it?
For the maintenance board, what we normally do is update it every day. So whenever an issue comes in, we would just have to input it there, the date where it was filed, the person who actually received it, and the date it would be resolved. Or tag it as resolved if it is. If it's not, then put it on pending or assign. It's very important because it's not just one VA who's handling those issues. So sometimes one agent and then it would be passed to the next person who would be logging in. So it's very important that it's updated so that that person or the next person who would be logging in would know what's happening during the other VA's shift. And then they could also make a follow-up just to make sure that that issue has been taken care of. So that maintenance board is really helpful for us.
And so I would say top board would probably be quick view.
Yes.
Most important. Second is maintenance board.
Yes.
Third, login board
Logins
is
and
very
contacts.
turnover board too. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we do with the turnover board?
For the turnover board, this is where you will always check every time that you go on shift. What are the tasks that are left with the previous VAs? Where we are right now in terms of those tasks, and then who's the person who's handling those. So, for example, for the AC issues, so who are the person that you may need to contact? So it's either the leasing office or the maintenance team of that property, or if it will take time, you may need to contact an outside vendor. So those are the things that you may need to note on the turnover board. There are also times that there are some actions that you did from that specific task or the person that you contacted, so that the next VA will also be aware on where currently at right now in terms of that issue. And then so that at least they will just continue what are the things that they may need to do during their shift.
So Christine, you're pretty much the manager of the virtual assistants. What would you say your management style is, and what really works well when you manage virtual assistants?
So with managing VAs, it's more likely best to really have communication with them all the time. Because you would know what they need, you would know how to manage them, and you would recognize and know their styles. Because if there's no communication, it's really hard for you to see which person is best to do this, which person is best to do that. So it's much better to really have that communication between you and them. So that's how I normally manage them. And then I normally ask them for feedback or ask them is there something wrong, and then I talk to them. And then we try to sort things out. So instead of just letting them decide on their own, I just really talk to them about it. Just so that we can understand each other as well.
Right.
Because often, yes, it's part of the team wherein you'll have conflicts or problems, but you really just tend to really talk to them one by one. So it's better that way.
Yeah, you've done a very good job on that. Chris, from your perspective, let's say you're still looking for a job and a host wants to hire you. How would you like them to manage you? What do you think would work best?
I think the management style will be to have an open communication, like what Christine said. Is to at least listen to what your VAs can actually provide or suggest in terms of what are the things that can actually benefit the company, because they're the one who's actually handling those people. I mean, the first barrier or your soldier or actually facing Airbnb, and also your guests. So at least you'll get to know more insights coming from your people or from your VAs. And then you can also get what are the things that we can actually do better, or what are the things that we may need to improve on. For example, this property that we currently have right now needs more touch up or needs more cleaning or need new furniture. So those are the things that you can actually learn from your VAs. And also maybe things that we can actually collaborate with the company. For example, as the owner, you can actually share insights and the things that we can actually learn or we can actually improve on in handling your properties as well. So if there is actually open communication, there will also follow the trust with each other. So technically, you'll have the confidence that you can actually do your job well, because you have your superior trust that you are doing right, and at least you can actually have on a weekly communication, at least twice a month, on how are we currently doing in terms of our business, so that we're not just answering phone calls or messages. At least we already know where we stand as a company and how are we going to reach the target that we want to achieve by the end of the month. I think that's one thing that we may also consider if we are running a business like this.
Yeah, that's very, very good feedback. And it's very important to make sure that you're treating your team well, and you make sure that people are staying, right? Because I think a lot of hosts have high turnover when it comes to virtual assistants. I know some bigger hosts run through virtual assistants very often, and maybe they might not stick around for more than 3 months. And it's very important to have longevity. So Christine, what would you say? I mean, you've been working for us for almost 5 years now. What would you say has helped you to stay on as a company? How is our culture that allows you to kind of want to stay with us and not look for another job?
To be honest, before I came into this industry, I was a hopper. Hopper meaning I transferred to one company to another. It's because I'm not happy. I tend to see negative parts and I just easily give up and just like move to another one. Mm-hmm. It's just that when I started with you, with a company, it's different. It's somewhat like I found the comfort that I'm looking for. That's why I stayed. You have the freedom to decide. You have all the free will to do what you know is right. It's something that not hold you back if you know you're right. Right? So especially in making decisions. And one good thing about this is my skills and talents are being not really appraised, but acknowledged.
Recognized.
Yes, it's being recognized. So that's one good thing as well. Another is the team as well, of course. If you have a good team with you, if you support each other, and that's one thing that would really be a factor in staying in the company. So that's actually what made me stay. Like good boss, good people to work with.
Good pay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course, that's part of it. But yeah, mostly that made me stay.
Yeah. And I know about a year and a half ago, we hosted like a company retreat.
Yes.
I couldn't attend, but it looked very, very fun. We rented a villa.
Exactly.
We talked a little bit about that experience of like, as a manager, being able to bond with everyone else.
It's actually a great experience because there are VAs that I get to meet for the first time personally, because I only like talk to them over the phone, especially like now what we are having right now. It's a meet and greet, first time that I actually meet together.
4 years,
and then Chris as well, this is the first time I met him in person, and it's really nice to bond with people, especially you're working with them. The experience with the villa is also nice because we get to enjoy while we're working. During that time we're having fun, like drinking, doing like singing and karaoke. But during that time as well, I was thinking of making sure that we're not like laid back and just relaxing while the work is being like forgotten. So it's a balance. We were able to enjoy that time, but we're still working and nothing's left behind.
100%, and that's really why I love hiring in the Philippines, is because the work culture is, the work ethic is very, very superb here.
Yes.
And you guys work very hard, very respectful, and also that translates over to customer service as well. So how would you describe, I guess, like the Filipino work culture?
Filipino
to
workers.
a foreigner. Yeah, like how would you describe the work culture here in the Philippines to a foreigner?
I guess Filipino workers are the most trusted one. I'm not saying, and not other races are not trusted, okay? It's just that based on my experience, Filipinos are really tend to work hard as long as they can. They don't easily quit. They see that the job is done well. So I think that made it different. Because Filipinos are really patient. They're really hard workers, and they really tend to give everything they can. So that's one thing that I could say that will sell Filipinos to work for like host.
And that's a big reason why us as a company we're successful is you work very, very hard and you lead by example, right? So your shift is from 9 a.m. to like 1 a.m. How are you able to manage that?
Before it was hard, to be honest, because it's straight. 16 hours, I guess.
Yeah.
To be exact, yeah, 16 hours. For me, because I'm not a morning person, to be honest. I'm a night person, so most of the time I'm really awake at night. I can't sleep. I just like before I can't sleep. I just watch movie and stuff. So literally I'm a night person. So I just manage time. So whenever it's nighttime, I just focus on my work, and if I have to do something, I make sure that somebody's covering, just in case I needed help, because I also have kids. So I tend to ask somebody, hey, just cover me for this time, and then I'll be back after 30 minutes. Let's say 30 minutes or an hour. And then that person will come in. Just being responsible, though, I think, and time management. That's why I was able to cope up with the 16-hour shift.
Okay, yeah. And that's something that, you even sometimes work overtime, too.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's very, like, I like that about you, definitely, for sure. And then, but also, like, if you do need to take a day off or, take a vacation, like, we allow that, really, as long as someone can cover. Right? Can you talk a little bit about that process? Like, hey, if someone is off, if they're feeling sick, how do you manage making sure that at all times, someone is covering? Because we pretty much have 24/7 customer service coverage. So at any given time, someone will be replying to guests or to Airbnb.
Yeah. I know this kind of job is sometimes exhausting because your brain is really working the entire shift. You would be handling different kinds of guests, different attitudes, and so on. And there are times that we really can't avoid, like let's say sickness or emergency with the family, or they really have to distress themselves just for one day, and which I understand. So for special cases like emergency or sickness, I tend to speak with the other VAs to cover it up, or if not, I'll cover. That's just how it is. So we're just covering each other. If they want to take a leave for let's say a day, they need to inform me at least 2 weeks or 1 week before that time, so that I can organize or say complete the staffing for 24 hours. Because I really don't want a person just telling me just now and the shift starts in a few hours that they would take a leave. No, I'm not allowing that. So normally I ask them to let me know at least a week or two if you're gonna take this day off. Just let me know so that I can rearrange the schedule.
Right. And there's an entire work culture in the Philippines around kind of working graveyard shifts on American time, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Graveyard shift is night shift here in the Philippines, wherein you really have to work the entire night up until morning. At first, it's really hard because the life of Filipinos starts in the morning. But again, like what I said earlier, it's just plainly time management. You can still get to sleep in the morning. You just have to adjust your body clock. That's it. You just have to really teach yourself how to do things and manage the time exactly.
Okay, awesome. So what would you say is the hardest part for each of you, hardest part about your job here at our company?
Me, letting go of people. Because it's hard. You already know the person, you know the skills, and you already know how they work. It's just that you really have to. And delivering that information is really hard for me.
Yeah.
But I really have to do it.
I know at first you wanted to give people a lot of chances,
Yes.
but as a company, we're only as strong as our weakest link, right? So if someone is slacking off, that affects everyone else, and they have to work harder to cover.
Yes.
So I don't want to get too deep into us letting someone go, but that definitely is something that you've had to learn and grow and evolve as a manager.
Yes.
What about you? The hardest part about the job?
Aside from the answer of Christine, if most of the guests are actually complaining, issues about the listing at the same time, 3 or 5 guesses, then or there are some outages in the location, so you may need to contact the internet provider or the leasing office. So those are the things that a bit harder in terms of handling Airbnb properties. So it feels like you're working like an octopus. You need to work from one PC or one tab to another while you're chatting with your guests or talking over the phone with the internet provider or other providers that you may need to contact in order to have those issues to be resolved. So I think aside from that, everything is actually working well. As long as you can actually get the answer from, for example, if you may need to contact the leasing office, if you can get an answer from them immediately, if they can send someone to the property to fix the issue, then everything should be good.
Exactly, yeah. And that's something that has really helped me as a business owner is hiring virtual assistants. So I know some Airbnb hosts, even at 20 properties, 25 properties, they don't even have a single virtual assistant. And as a host, you burn out very, very easily, right? Like you mentioned, you have to handle multiple guest problems at the same time. And whenever you call an internet provider, you could be on the line for an hour.
Correct.
Or even with Airbnb, so you can't be, on multiple lines at once. So you tend to burn out very, very easily as an Airbnb host if you don't hire virtual assistants and start to outsource a lot of those tasks. So what is your favorite part about the job that you have?
My favorite part is every time that I win and every turnovers or cancellation that mishandled by Airbnb, that's a good part because that's going to be counted as my claims. That's one thing. And every time that the guest's issues are actually being resolved in a timely manner, like the property complex maintenance team, or every time that you call the ISP provider, and every time that we ask Kevin, our regional property manager in the location, if those issues are actually being solved within my shift, I'm actually happy with that. So, which means to say that we're all good in doing our tasks on that specific shift. Then only few tasks will be done by the next VA, so we'll be handling the next issues.
And so talk a little bit about the relationship with Kevin. So Kevin is our regional manager. He started out as a handyman, kind of running around fixing maintenance issues, handling guest issues. So what is that relationship like between you and Kevin?
Our relationship with Kevin is actually, I think when I started, okay, is actually good. At first, I felt that he's actually a bit bossy. We just need to learn how he works with the company. He just need to be stiff or strict in terms of like doing actions and in terms of like asking information from him or tasks that he may need to do, and praise him every time that he do or completes his task during the day. So as long as you can actually deliver all of the information that he needs to do the task, then everything will actually go smooth every time that you ask him to do something. And I think that's actually working with Kevin and with all of the VAs.
Kevin's a big part of helping you provide evidence for winning the claims, right?
Yes.
So you guys work hand in hand.
Correct.
That aspect.
Yeah. So I always ask Kevin to provide me videos or itemized bill or items that are being damaged by the guests in Airbnb. And also to provide me videos of the repairs or the things that he need to do to the property, like for example, cleaning or ozone or deodorizing the furnitures or bed, couches. I need to get those information or documents so that I can actually be successful in filing claims to Airbnb.
Yeah. So speaking of that, we have a $1,000 smoking fee.
Yeah.
So what would you say is a typical amount that we collect? Let's say someone or a guest smokes on our property. What amount or dollar amount would you say we typically collect? And what is the best way for maybe another host, you can teach them how we win that?
Just make sure that you provide all of the evidence and also the receipts to the resolution center. Normally, the amount we're getting is actually around $800 to $900. If Airbnb claims department is not doing most of the investigation or asking a lot of things, then normally they pay like $1,000 if you were able to provide everything.
And what sort of evidence do we submit as a company to win that? We win it pretty much like 90% of the time.
There are times that if there are evidence like cigarette butts, ashes, if there is none, one thing that you could also submit is like the receipt or the cleaning receipt coming
Invoice.
from the cleaning company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
And what do you put on that invoice?
the authorizing rental of the ozone or humidifier. Yeah. So those are the things that you need to submit to Airbnb, and also deep cleaning. So you may need to provide a detailed information as well, like incident report or what are the things that were found inside the listing, most especially smell, because Airbnb is very strict in terms of smell issues with their listing. So their policy, smells cannot be documented. So typically, normally they will just reimburse you because of that policy.
A lot of people that watch my videos, they got really upset that we have a $1,000 smoking fee. But what happens if you smoke indoors in the Philippines? Like, it's more than a $1,000 smoking fee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is more, but I think most of the Filipinos are actually smoking,
Yes.
right? So I think we don't have that kind of fees here in the Philippines, but there are some hosts who actually ask additional cleaning for smoking because it's really hard to remove the smell inside the listing.
Right.
Yeah.
But in like a typical restaurant like this, there's smoking areas.
Yeah, there is.
But if you don't, like let's say you just decide to light up a cigarette here in the restaurant, what's the punishment for that?
I think that would be like,
I guess to answer that, there's gonna be a fine. My experience,
Imprisonment too.
either it's gonna be a fine that you have to pay, or like a policeman will just drop by or a guard will just drop by and escort you out, or you'll end up in prison. It depends though. Sometimes it's a month or more just for smoking in a place. Because I remember one time when I was out and I tend to really smoke a lot. So
Right.
there's this place that we ate on, and I thought they allow smoking. So I was like smoking inside, and then the waitress was like approaching me and asking me for 10,000 pesos for just smoking inside the premise. So I just went out instead, just not to continue what I'm doing.
It's about $200.
Yeah, roughly
Yeah.
$200.
And then so for those of you in the States that are complaining about that, you have it a lot easier than here in the Philippines. And if you get caught smoking like marijuana, that's like a
It's
prison
gonna
of
be
like a year,
imprisonment of minimum a year or more.
or they could potentially like kill you, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about your relationship with handymen, specifically Kevin or Manuel, and how was it like working with them, and how important are they and your relationship with them to our company?
With working with handymans or like maintenance or with Kevin, I don't like emphasize my position in the company. It's like we're the same. I normally just make sure that every detail is informed to them, specific details on a timely manner. If it's really needed right now, I ask them if you really need to come here right now. If it's urgent, just tell them it's really urgent. You really have to be here. It's not being like firm. It's more of like I'm imposing. Like you really need to be here.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I'm just letting them know that this is what it is. You really have to do this, but on a respectful way, because I don't wanna like make an impression that what is this girl? Why is she like acting this way? No, I don't like that. So I tend to really explain myself before, and that I really just need to be like this because this is work. But if it's outside work, then we're friends. That's not a problem. But if it's work, it's really work.
And what sort of character qualities make for a good handyman hire, would you say?
For a handyman, first thing I'm looking for is the availability. Because we can never tell
So
what
hard,
time. Yeah.
right? A lot of them are not available.
Exactly.
Yep.
We cannot avoid like an issue in the middle of the night. We can never tell. So availability is the very first one that I'm looking for. Next, maybe the working hours. That's just to follow. And then what are the things that he can do and he cannot do. So those are the things that really is important for you to know if that handyman is worth getting or not.
Right. Like our handyman can do everything: electrical, plumbing,
Exactly.
HVAC.
Yeah.
Definitely makes
It's
it a lot easier.
better if it's all in one package. Yes.
And how important would you say it is for you to get inspection reports?
For inspection reports, it's really needed actually,
Yeah.
because you would know beforehand, before a guest checks in, what needs to be done in the property, what supplies needed to be like provided, or if there's issue, you would know already ahead of time, and you can take actions. So that's how important inspection is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So our busiest days are typically Sundays.
Yes.
Right. What we have usually like 20, sometimes 30 turnovers.
Yes.
What was the biggest amount, like the most hectic day that you've had on a Sunday?
Like we had, I think that was 30 plus, 35 to 40 turnovers on that specific day. That's
And
how
what was
big.
that like? Like describe your day during that time.
It was crazy actually,
Yeah.
to be honest, because there are a lot of people really contacting you or communicating with you, informing you, hey, I can check in, and then you would see there's another call coming in, waiting. It's crazy, but again, it's how you handle stuff. So if that happens, you just have to really know which one you need to start first. The most urgent ones, prioritize things, yes. You just have to know which one you have to prioritize. And then the others, yes, you will pay attention, but you have to resolve the ones that needed attention, really.
And on that note, can you describe like the flow during the week? So typically Sundays and Fridays are the busiest, and what days are the slowest? Can you describe kind of like what your week looks like?
The slowest days normally is Monday to Wednesday. Thursday, it's just gonna went up a little, but not that much. But Friday, during weekend, it's really busy. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, especially that every weekend sometimes leasing office is closed. So it's really hard and a struggle if it's gonna be a weekend. But again, it's the mindset. You just have to really know if you would know the leasing office is already closed, so I have to call the vendor. So you just really have to know what you need to do on those days.
And what are some of the most common questions that you get from guests that you have to answer?
Typically the same thing every day actually. How is the parking? Where is the iron? Specific details about the property. So it's just the same. Sometimes they just really don't tend to read.
Right, because we have all that
Yes,
information
exactly.
available for them.
Yes, they just really tend not to read, but the information is already there. But they just have to confirm it for themselves. That's why they ask questions.
Right.
But typically it's just the same question over and over.
Yeah. Is there like a recurring issue that you see or problem that you have to deal with guests?
As of the moment, not really. Just the same issue that we have with the AC issue.
Yeah, because it's really hot in Austin right now. A lot of AC.
And understandable. Sometimes guests tend to really put the AC really, really low. So it's gonna really like crash the AC that we have in the property. So again, you just have to really know what to do if it happens.
And something that we've dealt with in the past is like pests, right?
Yes.
So what happens, like what do you do in your job when guest reports, let's say they see a roach? Like what is our typical process?
So just
Because sometimes, usually when they do that, they ask for a refund.
yes.
But here in Texas, it's very often that bugs come in. Maybe they left the door open or the window open and it just comes in by itself.
Yes.
So how do you combat that in terms of like not allowing for refunds?
So if in that case, what me and Chris is doing right now is mostly Chris is updating the listing and putting it on the description, like putting a note on it saying that this
There
is a
may be
seasonal.
bugs
Yeah, there may be
because of-
bugs, so that it's gonna be easier for him to fight the claim on.
Right.
But normally on that certain case, I just normally ask them photos. If it's just one bug or one roach, I don't believe it's a valid claim already.
Yeah.
So I tend to really fight for it
Right,
if it's
right.
just one. But if there are really like infestation inside the property, then I tend to resolve it. Either
How so?
call vendor or complex to send pest control over.
Right. And we'll shut the listing down for a day and make
Yes.
sure it's taken care of.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very, very important as a host. If you have any sort of amenity issues, maybe the pool is closed,
Yeah.
to have that in your listing
Yes.
in the other things to note section.
Yes.
Because I know you guys do that very, very diligently. That way, if a guest does complain about it, it's already there disclosed, and you can actually use that to help battle claims. And obviously, you'd want to disclose that to someone that may be booking so they can read it. And if they're still okay with it, and they're still booked, then that means they're okay with it.
Yes. Correct.
Awesome. So for the last question, describe kind of what you see your future as in the company, what you think about going forward.
For me, I just really want to stay with the company for a long time. It's been my home for the past 4 years and looking forward to more years to come because I'm literally enjoying what we're doing right now. Enjoying dealing with people like Chris, Stacy, and Trish, and you. So it's already a home. It's not a work for me now, it's already a home because I have my buddies and you working with. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
It's beautiful. Appreciate that. We love having you here. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, since I'm actually just turned my 6 months later, I think on September 7th. So that will be my 6 month in the company. Yeah, I would also want to stay longer with the company. And also if the company will also grow bigger, I would also want to grow bigger as well together with the company. I also put a lot of things that I can actually provide to the company and share the knowledge that I've learned from my BPO experience and also with Airbnb. And also to have help other hosts as well and how they can actually be successful with their Airbnb business.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming in and joining me on this conversation. It was amazing to meet you guys.